and they would just be Milwaukee off the night before. So, other than that, it's been shockingly surprising. Good basketball game in and game out.
Yeah, that ball movement has been crisp. I mean, Ben, you've seen a couple of the Nets games. I know we've texted about it. I mean, what's your takeaway, especially from that Clippers game on Sunday night?
I mean, I think the biggest thing with the Nets has just been that the system is working. Jacque Vaughn is kind of pulling all the right levers, and it just seems like the guys there. I guess the way that I would put it is when you watch a team like the Pelicans, so this might be a nice little segue into them, they don't look like they're having very much fun. I've never watched a basketball team that's supposed to be playing for the playoffs seem like they're having less fun as they're doing it. They just looked desultory the entire time. I mean, there were guys whose just shoulders were hanging, their heads were down. Defensively, there was just like these Olay moves, like it just, they weren't playing together. And then you look at a team like the Nets, and it's just they play with this energy, and like you said, the ball's moving, everyone's moving kind of as a unit, and I think that's a big difference. And I think that's really been a big part of this is that some of these other teams have kind of slept on them, and they've said like, oh, this is going to be a walkover game, and then that's where like, all right, well then we're going to shoot 45, 50 threes. We're going to make it rain on you. And then all of a sudden, like the other team's down 10 points, and they're like, oh, dang, it's that Mike Tyson thing. Like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And the Nets have been punching some people in the face in the first quarter and second quarter of these games.
One of my biggest highlights of this restart for the Nets, watching them, has just been beating Kawhi Leonard by that much. I'm not used to seeing Kawhi Leonard facing such a deficit. I know Paul George was resting and Trez wasn't there yet and Pat Bev's injured, but they still had Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Zubac, Kawhi, Lou Will, and they blew the doors off of them with that 21-point lead in the first quarter. And it just showed that the Nets came to play. I mean, we can have you on in the offseason to talk about this, but just quick thoughts before we move on to some of the not-so-hot teams down on the NBA campus. Hearing a lot of noise that Jacque Vaughn's a legitimate candidate to be the Nets coach full term. But with the article on The Athletic coming out that Jason Kidd, Ty Lue, and Jeff Van Gundy are all going to get a look, I mean, who do you see coaching the Nets next year? Just based on what you've heard so far.
From what I'm hearing, it's a two-man race between Ty Lue and Jason Kidd. But however, I could see kind of like what the Knicks are going to probably do. I could see Vaughn being brought back as an assistant coach. And it's probably not what he wants, but it's probably best for him, get some more reps under his belt to stay with the organization because he's doing a great job interim right now.
He's not even an interim, though. He's the head coach. There's no interim tag on him.
There's no interim,
he's
right.
7-2. That's the third fastest mark. I mean, the Nets have had a real shoddy history. We all know that. But
right.
7-2, that's the third best start in franchise history behind Lawrence Frank and PJ Carlesimo. And those guys didn't stick around. So I guess
Okay, Jason, put your pants back on. Put your pants back on. All right,
we're on a video call. I'm fully dressed.
I think Vaughn gets a legitimate shot to defend his record, but it's one thing where you're like coaching up talent, but when you have all-stars waiting in the wings, like are they going to listen to him? I think they will, but I definitely think you need a stronger voice.
I mean, we're also not talking about we're not talking about like Steph Curry here. No offense to Kyrie and KD, but this is not Steph Curry who's as you said the words kumbaya earlier. Steph Curry is kumbaya, and I love KD and Kyrie, but those guys they keep it real with whoever they're talking to at all times. And
yeah, but Jay Kidd couldn't even coach Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and Darren Williams, okay? And those are three of the tougher personalities of this modern era of NBA basketball. So it's going to be pretty interesting. We have all offseason to get into the coaching search, but I know, Jason, you probably thought I was going to gloat more. I'm trying to be a professional here. Before we move on to the bus, we do have a final. So the Blazers did win. They beat the Mavs 134-131. Yes. Insane. So that puts Portland in the 8th seed right now. They have leapfrogged Memphis by half the game, but we brought up the Pelicans, so I wanted to get into a little bit of a roundtable discussion. I think partially why the Pelicans struggled was because Zion was in and out of camp, and then you had Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart all being there. Derek Favors was a shell of himself this season. And then you had J.J. Redick and Drew Holiday as vets who were very disappointed in the team's overall performance. But both of you guys, I'm going to ask you, what do you think went wrong with the Pelicans? Was it Gentry's coaching? Was it Zion's conditioning? I mean, what went wrong?
Honestly, I want to say it's a little of both. I felt like Zion, he could have came in a little bit better shape. He could have put down some of those beignets in New Orleans and really like focus on his conditioning. But at the same time, the coaching should have developed some kind of strategy for not just Zion, but like the whole team. Because like we said earlier, they did not seem interested at all. You know, Lonzo's doing his own thing. Ingram seemed very disinterested at a lot of the times. Favorites, like you said, was shelling himself. So, you know, it was there. And then when they had the limits restriction on Zion, he kind of mentally checked out of the whole bubble early. So it was to me, everybody has a part to blame on the I guess the implosion of the Pelicans, because I really thought coming in, this whole 22 team thing was really designed for them. It was designed to get eyeballs on Zion and see if they can make a playoff push, and it totally backfired.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Jason. I mean, I think that's a huge part of why they brought in as many teams as they did. And who would have thought that the Suns would leapfrog the Pelicans? I mean, if you had told someone a few months ago that the Suns might have a chance of the playoffs, that I don't know what they would have said back to you, but they would have been ready to institutionalize you. And I mean, to watch what happened with the Pelicans, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. The coaching part of this is huge. You know, I think Gentry's going to be on the hot seat after this. You have to think that's going to be a team that's going to look at another head coach after this, because I mean that was very disappointing to watch what happened there and the way that it happened, with just breakdowns on both sides, and then watching Zion, it was often like inaudible for Zion to just kind of go. You know, often you watch these plays where it was just like Zion was successful because they just gave him the ball top of the key and said, go ahead and do what you can, or they just set a pick and let JJ come off it. But, you know, there was a lot of freewheeling offensive possessions, and then defensively, they just didn't look like a unit at all. And I think some of that has to kind of come back on the coach.
Yeah, but Zion wasn't even healthy for a full season. And I'll admit I was wrong. I had the Pelicans as a playoff team. Ben, you know this. I picked them in October. So do you guys think, Jason, we'll start with you. Do you think they're going to get another go-around with Gentry as coach and this same core brought back with a full year of Zion? Or do you think that David Griffin is already going to go into retool mode and maybe ship a couple of those vets out?
I definitely think David Griffin's going to go to retool mode and try to ship some of those guys out. And I don't be surprised. Like, you know, we hear Kid linked to the Nets. He's also linked to the Pelicans. But don't be surprised if the Pelicans make a move for a coach. Like, once this is all said and done, especially if Zion starts getting, you know, starts talking more about how disgruntled he is. And he's only been there, like you said, not even half a season, and the rookie season at that. And he's already disgruntled. That's not a good look on the coaching staff.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. I think the head coach, I think that very well may change. I mean, Gentry has had ups and downs, and this has been kind of the same problem. I think often you see a coach who can address their weaknesses. For Gentry, it's often been the inability to really get a system that his players can play in effectively. He's a good X's and O's coach. He's great as an assistant in that respect, and he's good developmentally, but I think he's had trouble putting in a system. He's kind of like the anti-Coach Bud. I think there's a good chance that he maybe has to find a new place of employment. But at any rate, speaking of that, we've been talking about all these 8 seeds, you know, Jason, and I'm curious what you make of, I don't know if we'd call them one of these bust teams, but what do you make of the Lakers who, you know, I'm going to throw out one of my favorite statistics. Before last night's game, the Lakers had the worst offense in the bubble. I mean, what do you make of that? Has there anything, I mean, has that been something that people have been talking about? I mean, they came in as the favorites to win the title. And since then, you know, people are saying, what happened to the offense? What's going on with this team? And there's some cryptic statements from LeBron coming out. I mean, has that been getting talked about? And what is your read on that?
It's definitely being talked about. My personal read about the Lakers are they're just like rope-a-doping everybody. However, it looks like they're going to be locked into the wrong matchup. And first of all, I like to refer to the Lakers as the Los Angeles Cavaliers, because it looks like the 2019, 2018 Cavs out there. And I think what's going to happen with them is they're going to have problems with whoever point guard they deal with. If it's not Dame, if it's going to be Chris Paul, if it's going to be Patrick Beverly, if it's going to be Reggie Jackson, if it's going to be, it doesn't matter which point guard they're going to deal with, they're going to have their hands full. And I just think LeBron always needs shooters, but for some reason the bubble is really exposing the lack of shooters that the Lakers have. And I feel like LeBron and AD is going to have to do their best to carry this thing through. But I got to go on record. I don't think they're going to make it out the first round.
It's looking like that right now, but we all see the on-the-court stuff going on. But do you put any stock into LeBron's comments about something going on off the court that he can't control? I mean, we're not asking you to reveal if you know something that's not out. Or if you want to, you can break it here. I mean, we don't mind. But, I mean, do you think there's some off-court trauma? Because it seems as though LeBron handpicked that team. You know, the free agents signed, the replacement players. You know, he got his running mate, Anthony Davis, which is probably – the best player he's ever played with, and that includes, you know, Dwayne Wade, Kyrie, Chris Bosh. So is there something going on off the court? Are they not liking Vogel's coaching? They put together a coaching staff of all ex-NBA head coaches. So they seem like they're ready to go in and win. And I have the Clippers winning it all. I don't think this Lakers team can win it all as currently constructed, but do you think there's some off-court stuff going on, or do you think that's all smoke and mirrors?
I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. They like LeBron just putting out there just to, like, you know, to draw attention off of them, because, you know, like I said, they have the worst shooting percentage out of all the teams. Even Washington has a better shooting percentage in the bubble than they do. So I don't think LeBron's out there putting smoke screens just to, like, camouflage stuff. But him and Anthony Davis will be ready for the playoffs. Everybody else, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure, because you don't know what you're going to get from JR or from Waiters on a, you know, even Kuzma. That to me was like it was a great play, and it was one of those things, like, I'm not expecting them to do that every night. So it's one of those things you just don't know what you're going to get from those guys. But it's all smoke and mirrors. They're just trying to get the tension off of them in terms of, like, this how bad they've been playing.
I'm gonna also say on the other side of this, and I mean, it's funny. Everyone's been really down on the Lakers, and I actually been sort of impressed when I watched them play. In a lot of ways, like I felt like the offense has been bad, but as you said, it's been a lot of missed shots, and maybe some of that carries over. Maybe, you know, you said the rope-a-dope thing at the beginning, and I thought you were going a different direction, because they're getting good shots and they're just not hitting them. And on the flip side, one of the things that I had wondered about this team a lot all year was, how real is the defense? Is this a team that can defend well enough to win a title? Because anytime you have LeBron on your team, your offense is going to be fine. You know, at the end of the day, when LeBron is helming your offense, you're going to do okay. And I think there's almost like a baseline that you get to with just having LeBron. But defensively, could they hold up? And their defense has been very, very good. And Alex Caruso has been unbelievable on defense. Like, for perimeter players, he just knows where to be all the time. He is so good at getting in the right spot. And he has these little moves where the guy tries to go around the pick on the pick and roll, and he just sticks his arm in, pokes the ball out, comes out the other side, and ends up with a fast break layup. And he does it so frequently, it's uncanny. But I'm actually a little bit optimistic. That said, running into the Blazers, if they run into the Blazers in the first round, that is not going to be a fun series. As you said, they really don't have. I mean, I guess it'll be Caruso guarding Lillard, which that's a tough cover for anybody. But I mean, I guess the other thing with them is, you mentioned Kuzma. We have Davis, we have LeBron. After that, do you trust the rest of the guys? Yeah, like, I mean, do you trust those guys to really step up and be a contributor?
I trust Danny Green. Guy's won 2 championships on 2 different teams. You know, he's got that medal. He's got the playoff medal.
Yeah, I'll probably go Danny Green, then Caruso. Then it's a crapshoot. Then it's a serious crapshoot.
J.R. Smith. Can I sell you some Dion Waiters stock? Yeah, it's a tough one. Speaking of teams that are getting a little tough here, their rosters are starting to deplete. Jason, another team that is kind of to that point for very different reasons are the Philadelphia 76ers, who I feel bad. I shouldn't laugh because I really do feel bad for the Sixers fans.